All right, welcome back everybody to another episode of the Bears Pod with Parker Hurley. This is our third episode here. This is really the first one where we're in our rotation, where we expect to continue recording here Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central. All Chicago Bears news for you as the offseason is about to kick off. It's about to get really exciting here. So we're excited to have you here. Follow me on Twitter at Parker Hurley. I write for Bear Goggles On. Follow Bear at Bear Goggles On. Go to beargoggleson.com for all your Chicago Bears needs and everything like that. So I'm very excited here. Episode 3, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're going to be coming at you twice a week now. And the big news on this Tuesday is we just finished the NFL Combine. Everybody's coming back from Indianapolis. You gather your news. By Monday is the tampering period. By Wednesday, the NFL season officially starts. So all the trades start going through, all the free agency starts going through, everything starts happening. So it's going to start really ramping up here. It's going to be a great time, an exciting time if you're a Chicago Bears fan because they have the number 1 overall pick. And there's so much news surrounding the number 1 overall pick that we're going to be talking for the majority of this, for 30 minutes here. We're going to be talking about what do the Chicago Bears do with the number 1 overall pick? We talked about last Thursday. We said it just doesn't sound like Justin Fields is getting traded. Everything Ryan Poles said he needs to be blown away. Everything Matt Eberflus said we're already planning development. We already have specific things we're looking for Justin Fields and from Justin Fields moving forward. So the reality is that the Chicago Bears aren't moving quarterback. And I think Peter King said it definitively in a column in which he talked to Ryan Poles, in which Ryan Poles talked about the trade offers that he wants to get for the number 1 overall pick. And he said, if I want to be blown away, well, perhaps did somebody blow him away? Was it Anthony Richardson blowing him away? I think you could say potentially athletically, he did. He blew a lot of people away. But which one thing that you'll forget is that Justin Fields didn't actually get the chance to go to the NFL Combine due to the COVID protocols. He went to his Ohio State Pro Day at actually a slightly lesser weight than Anthony Richardson for sure, but Justin Fields ran a very similar 40 at his Pro Day to Anthony Richardson, and he didn't opt out of running at the Combine. He just didn't have the chance to run at the Combine because of the COVID, things of that nature. So you could argue, is Anthony Richardson a slightly better athlete than Justin Fields? Maybe. At this point, in terms of passers, is Justin Fields still raw as a passer? Yes. Is he more raw than Anthony Richardson? No. So you get to the point where did Anthony Richardson blow him away athletically? Potentially, but not to the point where he blew him away. And Brian Poles could say, okay, I'm going to trade Justin Fields because I could get 2 more years of Anthony Richardson on the cheap. You think between those 2 years, what's he going to do from the time you draft until then? He's going to turn into, hopefully Justin Fields is what you would kind of hope so. So the Chicago Bears are still going to trade the number 1 overall pick. The question is, did Anthony Richardson make the number 1 overall pick more valuable now? Is the number 1 overall pick worth more to the Chicago Bears than it was just last week because of what Anthony Richardson did? Our teams, just last week we were saying, well, the number 1 overall pick, surefire, is Bryce Young, who checks in at 5'10", 200 pounds on a good day because he didn't work out, and maybe he's not at his peak physique, and maybe he does, if he loses a couple pounds, maybe he would be, in that situation. So you say, okay, maybe Bryce Young isn't that hands down lock. We got to go get him guy. Here comes Anthony Richardson out of nowhere, not out of nowhere, but from the depths. And now Anthony Richardson is, if you want Anthony Richardson, you got to get him. Oh, are the Colts at 4 going to be interested in Anthony Richardson? Well, the Falcons at 8 are going to be interested in Anthony Richardson. What's the floor? How low does he go now? And now you have a situation where, okay, the Texans are taking a quarterback at 2. Do you have to jump the Texans? Do you have to jump, like I said, the Colts at 4? If the Texans are sitting there at 2 and they're not going to move up, you have to say there's only, there's 3 and there's 1. If we want to jump the Colts at 4 and we think that they potentially are drafting Anthony Richardson now, it's only 3 or 1 that we can get to. So you could say that the Chicago Bears may have just saw what they were going to get for the number 1 pick go up because it's not just Bryce Young. It's also CJ Stroud. They went Richardson then Stroud because of the last names R and then S. Richardson blew it away athletically, physically, this and that. In terms of accuracy, CJ Stroud versus Anthony Richardson, all of a sudden you said, well, CJ Stroud is no doubt the more accurate passer. So now you have whichever way you're looking, there's three quarterbacks that, and if any team has a particular favorite, if one team says, okay, we don't love Bryce Young, so we don't need to trade up for number one, and then CJ Stroud just blew it away at the combine, they say, well, now we need to trade up for CJ Stroud. Maybe we didn't like Bryce Young, but now we need to trade up for Stroud. Maybe they said, okay, we don't need to trade up for Bryce Young because we like Anthony Richardson. Oh, wait, now after this weekend, maybe we do need to trade up for Anthony Richardson. So if you're asking me, the Chicago Bears draft pick just got more valuable. So like, comment, subscribe, everybody. Really, like I said, I'm excited after this NFL Combine to keep talking Chicago Bears here. As I get a drink, and we talk about Anthony Richardson and how he potentially increased the value for the Chicago Bears. Another thing that increased the value for the Chicago Bears potentially is if the Chicago Bears are out on Jalen Carter, who a lot of people presumed if the Bears are stuck at number one, they're taking Carter. If the Bears trade down to 2, they're taking Carter. If the Bears trade down to 4, they're taking Carter. Let's assume the Bears are out on Carter now because of the news on Jalen Carter. All of a sudden, Ryan Poles is saying, now we can trade back to 9, 8, 9, 10, maybe even further. In a Peter King article from his Monday Morning Quarterback said just as much. It said, Ryan Poles said, we think we have 6 to 8, blue chip players. And when I read that from Ryan Poles' vantage, I have to say those are not quarterbacks, because if he saw one of those quarterbacks as one of those, blue chips players, he would potentially draft one. Or, he just isn't speaking in terms of these are, the top players include quarterbacks. So if he has 6 to 8 players that he sees in a top tier, and it's not just, people were saying, is it Jalen Carter or Will Anderson? And then there's a drop off. If Jalen Carter isn't in that, top tier, and maybe Will Anderson, we've talked about he's maybe isn't the best scheme fit for the Chicago Bears defense. I think if they're stuck there, if they're taking the best player available, sure, you take Will Anderson. He's the best player available. But if you're talking in terms of we can't trade down below X because we don't want to miss out on X player, if the Bears are saying we have 6 to 8 guys in that range, you add in 2 or 3 quarterbacks, you say, well, the Bears have, there's 10 to 12 picks here, where the Bears still think that they could get one of their top 6 to 8 players, and they all see 6 through 8 in a similar tier. You add in 2 or 3 quarterbacks, they could trade back to 8, 9, 11, things like that, and they could be more. All of a sudden, now they're getting more, just not even compared to losing out on Anthony Richardson. Now you're getting more because you could be moving back further in the NFL draft. If you move back to 2, what are you picking up? A third rounder here. They said, maybe if you move back to 4, you get a first round pick. Ryan Poles says, I think that I could potentially get 2 first round picks out of this number 1 overall pick. And if I think I can get 2 future picks, then it doesn't matter how far back I move. And that's where you're looking at teams like the Indianapolis Colts and the Carolina Panthers, or not the Indianapolis Colts and the Carolina Panthers. First, the Carolina Panthers you're absolutely looking at, and the Atlanta Falcons is the other team that you're looking at now and saying it used to be the Bears, top 2 teams. The 2 teams that we wanted to trade down for are the Texans and the Colts. Now the Bears are really starting to circle, the Panthers. Like I just said, they're the Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons saying, if you guys want your quarterback, you guys need to come up and get him, and we'll gladly fall back to 8. Because if 2 or 3 quarterbacks go and we're sitting at 8 and we get 5, our 5th best player on our board by sitting at 8, and we have 6 to 8 guys in our top tier, then the Chicago Bears all of a sudden they're in business. And so that's what they may be looking to do. And now the Indianapolis Colts are looking here saying, are we about to get jumped by, like I said, the Atlanta Falcons or the Carolina Panthers? Are they about to jump us for our guy? Because the Bears are more, they want to trade back. They're more interested to trade back. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Chicago Bears do. And I think not only did Anthony Richardson help his, the Chicago Bears case, I think Ryan Poles helped his case by saying we could trade back further and we could pick up a little bit more assets. So that's going to be really interesting to follow. And as we keep going on here, the Bears Pod, don't forget to like, subscribe. I'm at Parker Hurley on beargoggleson.com. Follow me there for everything Chicago Bears related. Like I said, we're transitioning here from Did Anthony Richardson help the Chicago Bears maybe pick up a little bit more in the draft, or did the Chicago Bears help themselves by saying, we're willing to move back further now than we were just about a week ago? An interesting dynamic happened today with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson gets franchise tagged, the non-exclusive franchise tag, which opens him up to being able to explore free agency. He takes an offer sheet back to the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens either have the chance to match the tag or they could trade 2 first-round picks to acquire Lamar Jackson. It's going to be really sorry. I'm dealing with living in the Midwest. You got these season changes on the weather and everything like that. Not the best day for recording, but either way, we're pushing through. And like I said, we're talking about Lamar Jackson in the reality that he's going to seek free agency, and a team can decide to pay him, but they have to trade 2 first-round picks. How does this impact the Chicago Bears? They're not going to sign Lamar Jackson. One thing in which it does is these teams that want to trade up to number 1 for a quarterback. Okay, are they now saying, well, like I just said, the Carolina Panthers, it may cost them 2 future first-round picks to move from 9 to 1. So if they want C.J. Stroud, or if they want Bryce Young, or if they want just a no doubt they want their guy, if the Carolina Panthers want their guy, it may cost them 2 first-round picks to move from 9 to 1. Now you say that may be worth it because, Lamar Jackson's salary is, potentially $40 million plus. We could trade 2 first-round picks just to move up to number 1. We get our guy and we just move on. But you start thinking about it and you say, okay, if you're the Panthers and you have to trade 2 first-round picks for an unproven rookie, yes, at a more modest salary, or you're the Panthers and you're saying we could trade 2 first-round picks for Lamar Jackson, who's much more proven, does that impact the Chicago Bears and what they think they can get in terms of return? Because the Panthers could be saying, when you really look at the Panthers and when you really look at what Ryan Poles said about what he expects to get from the Panthers, he said to trade back from 1 to 9, it's going to cost a 2024 first and a 2025 first. So 2 first-round picks plus the number 9 overall pick to move up to number 1. So you get that. It almost costs you 3 first-round picks, your first-round pick to draft the player, and then 2 future first-round picks. Whereas with Lamar Jackson, it does cost you that number 9 overall pick, but then it just costs you 1 future pick, and you can sign Lamar Jackson. And is Lamar Jackson making, like I said, $40+ million per year versus what's that rookie quarterback who you drafted number 1 overall? Is the difference, $30 million? Yes. But the difference is also if Ryan Poles is asking for a 2025 first-round pick to move up from 9 to 1, and the Panthers just need 2 first-round picks to get Lamar Jackson, do they look at the Bears and say, yeah, that's great that you want multiple first-round picks. That's great that you want to trade down to 9 now. We don't want to trade up. We're completely fine if we cannot trade up to 1. If we play chicken and you do trade number 1 to somebody and they take our guy, or between 1 and 2 because the Texans are going to take a quarterback, and then 3, the Panthers are there, we'll trade for Lamar Jackson. How bad is that? So when you're thinking about that, you're saying the Panthers at 9 can almost sit back, and the Bears are demanding this, that, and the other, saying if we're going to move back, we're not moving back to 4, we're moving back to 9. You need to throw in the 2025 first-round pick. The Panthers are saying we don't need to throw in a 2025 first-round pick because we could trade for Lamar Jackson and just pay him, and he's a potential fit. So, like I said, I think it's really interesting because the first news is that nobody is really interested in Lamar Jackson. So our team's looking at it and saying, based off of what Anthony Richardson did, based off of you have to revolve your scheme around Lamar Jackson, well, you're going to have to do the same thing around Anthony Richardson. So you might as well, okay, has Richardson proven anything that Lamar Jackson's an MVP? Anthony Richardson isn't even close, to that yet. Absolutely. But between, 5 years at, $30 million versus, $50 million plus a year, Richardson won't even make what Lamar Jackson makes next season in the first 4 seasons of his rookie salary. Lamar Jackson, like I said, is so much more proven. He's got all these injury downside, whereas Anthony Richardson, he's so many more questions on the field, but he doesn't have the questions with salary, and he doesn't have the questions with injury. it starts to get interesting. But like I said, if you're the Panthers and all of a sudden it goes on, who do we if you're the Panthers, you're saying we don't want to trade the extra first round pick all the way to move up all the way to 1. So we still have Lamar Jackson. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to I think the Bears need to see how this Lamar Jackson thing shapes out. And it's going to be interesting because they also want to get this deal done before Monday when free agency starts. And another interesting thing here, as we're going to pivot to another subject here, is David Montgomery. I think all of a sudden the tides turned, and here's David Montgomery, potentially the best free agent running back on the market. Everybody said, oh, what an elite free agency class, just a outstanding group of running backs. Nobody's going to get paid in free agency in terms of running backs because there's so many of them. You could just pick your poison in terms of running back. Oh, I'm going to take a drink here. But like I said, with David Montgomery, first you thought David Montgomery is going to test free agency. He's going to be the 5th or 6th best running back. He's not going to get paid, and maybe he'll circle back to the Chicago Bears. Josh Jacobs franchise tagged. Tony Pollard franchise tagged. Saquon Barkley franchise tagged. Now you start to look at the free agency landscape and you say, well, is David Montgomery all of a sudden went from, like I said, these top 3 guys, is he 4th, 5th, in that range to now is he one of the best free agent running backs on the market? I talked about on Thursday, I said Ryan Poles at his meeting did not sound like anyone who was even interested. I don't think he even offered David Montgomery a contract yet. I think he said, we got to trade this number 1 pick. We got to sign, defensive linemen. We got to sign offensive linemen. We got to prep for the draft. We got to do this, that, and the other. And then we'll get to David Montgomery, hopefully. But Ryan Poles did not sound like someone who said, oh, we'll sign David Montgomery before Monday. He won't test free agency. That's no big deal. The franchise deadline passed. We knew David Montgomery wasn't going to get franchise tagged. He doesn't. Because all these other running backs get franchised, he's about to hit free agency. The Chicago Bears don't have an offer out there whatsoever. And now he's going to probably be the highest paid running back. Is that going to be a mind-blowing salary? The franchise tag is, like $11 million right now for running backs. So is he even going to get that? If you create a bidding war, you could potentially argue, and between maybe if you 3 years, $36 million with some funny money and things like that, maybe David Montgomery gets paid because he is the top running back to hit free agency. But even at like $7 to $8 million, if teams start bidding and start going at it, and they start offering, like I said, 4 years or start offering guaranteed money, the Chicago Bears, like I said, they have no interest in David Montgomery. And another thing that came out from the NFL Combine, Matthew Berry, who was a fantasy guy from ESPN and now he's at NBC Sports, wrote, one of the things that, when he's whining and dining down in Indianapolis and meeting people for the NFL Combine and talking to people, one of the things that he saw vehemently from the Chicago Bears is David Montgomery is not coming back to the Chicago Bears. So when you combine the reality of there are multiple players, multiple running backs that are just completely taken off the market. Even when you look at the NFL Combine, a lot of people said this is a really deep running back draft, this and that. Some people due to size, some people due to speed, some people, you just all of a sudden the NFL Combine comes and the list just starts dwindling, checking a few names off the boxes. And all of a sudden, like I said, David Montgomery is going to look around and say, I'm actually a little bit more higher priority here than I realized. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one. And I think it makes a lot of sense that he's going to probably be the highest sought after free agent. I think any team that needs a running back is going to give David Montgomery a deal. And I don't see the Chicago Bears whatsoever. They have so many more needs that once David Montgomery gets anything, they're off the board for that. So we'll pivot here into the last segment here, the last 10 minutes or so of the podcast. Leave a comment if you guys have anything you want to hear me break down or talk about as we head into the home stretch here. Like I said, it's the Bears pod at beargoggleson.com. Follow me at beargoggleson and at Parker Hurley on Twitter. This is our 3rd episode. We'll be back Thursday, same time, same place, everything like that. Just an exercise I did. I kind of went position by position and picked out some free agents as we get ready for free agency. Maybe expand on this a little bit Thursday, but for the final 10 minutes here, talk about some free agents that I think really could fit the Chicago Bears. And the first name, starting at quarterback, obviously, like I said, they're not trading Justin Fields, but a name that I think makes a lot of sense for the Chicago Bears as a backup quarterback is Marcus Mariota. And obviously, he just got released. And you're going to have to talk to him because of how things ended with the Atlanta Falcons and the fact that it seemed like when he lost his starting job to Desmond Ritter, he kind of left the facility, wasn't being a mentor to Desmond Ritter. If he wants to call it an NFL career, he can call it an NFL career because if that's how he's going to act, nobody's going to sign him. But if you call Marcus Mariota and you say, you're not starting for the Chicago Bears, you're a backup and we're signing you now to be a valuable person for Justin Fields. I think you could argue that maybe Marcus Mariota is somebody that you could sign and be a potential backup for the Chicago Bears. Moving to running back, I think the biggest name for me that I kind of like, and we're going to see what's going to happen, especially with Joe Mixon. It's going to be really interesting because Cincinnati Bengals could cut Joe Mixon and sign Samaje Perine because during the playoff stretch, I don't know how many people noticed this, but Samaje Perine outsnapped Joe Mixon in the playoffs. A lot of it had to do with, the Bengals were trailing in, I think, a lot of the games that they were in, or at least two of the games that they were in, they were trailing. And Samaje Perine is a much better pass protector than Joe Mixon. And so he was getting a lot of pass protection reps. And because the Bengals were without tackles, they wanted better pass protection. And so Joe Mixon rode some pine, and Samaje Perine was playing over him. Like I said, maybe the Cincinnati Bengals let Joe Mixon go and keep Perine. I still think Mixon's a more dynamic player, and I think Perine is the perfect fit for the Chicago Bears because his pass protection. Khalil Herbert is an extremely explosive running back. The issue with Khalil Herbert is he's awful in pass protection, and he doesn't catch passes really very well at all, but he's a big play hitter. Samaje Perine is slow, and compared to Joe Mixon, extremely slow, or compared to Khalil Herbert, extremely slow. But Perine is a great complement to Herbert or Joe Mixon because he picks up blitzes and pass protection. He's valuable in the passing game. He converts the short yardage plays that Khalil Herbert won't. So I think Samaje Perine would be a great fit as a complement to Khalil Herbert on the Chicago Bears as a nice 1-2 punch. The big play hitter in Herbert, the power back in Perine, the pass protection from Perine on and converting, those short yardage things. Just a quick one, Max Williams, tight end, I think from the Arizona Cardinals. I think he fits the Chicago Bears very well because I think it would be a perfect room if they have Cole Kmet. They would like to re-sign Trayvon Wesco and then bring in Max Williams as a third tight end. He's been in the NFL for like 9 seasons because he's a reliable blocker. He was just with the Arizona Cardinals, and the Arizona Cardinals tight ends coach, Jim Dre, went from Arizona to the Chicago Bears last season. I think the connection makes sense. I think Max Williams understands his role in the NFL. I think it would be a good fit. Wide receiver, I think the perfect fit for the Chicago Bears. And I think if you see a number that you're shocked about with wide receiver and you say, holy crap, the Chicago Bears paid so-and-so that much money to Mecole Hardman. I think the Chicago Bears are going to overpay Mecole Hardman, and it will be the talk of he'll be the Christian Kirk of the offseason of, wow, the Jags overpaid Christian Kirk. I can't believe it. Wow, the Chicago Bears just overpaid Mecole Hardman. I could not believe it. The big reason, plenty of reasons, but the first reason would be Ryan Poles, the Kansas City Chiefs general manager. Or the Chicago Bears general manager, was a scout for the Kansas City Chiefs, was in the personnel department for the Kansas City Chiefs when they drafted Mecole Hardman in the second round. So they drafted him very highly. Not only that, he was 20 years old when they drafted him. So Mecole Hardman enters free agency at 24 years old. It's going to be pretty valuable in that regard. So Ryan Poles knows him. Ryan Poles was in a room that drafted him in the second round, graded him as a second round, and he was one of those scouts that helped put the finishing grades on him. So Ryan Poles liked Mecole Hardman as a prospect. Now he's 24 years old, coming off his first year. Ryan Poles, I think, is going to be very interested in him. Beyond that, you look at Luke Getsy, and one of the things that Luke Getsy was doing with guys like Dante Pettis is like end arounds, jet sweeps, getting receivers in motion. They traded for Chase Claypool because how did the Steelers use Claypool? A lot of jet sweeps, a lot of handoffs, a lot of things like that. So you start to look and say, Luke Getsy with the motion, with, another thing. Who did the Chicago Bears draft in the third round last season? Velus Jones Jr. from Tennessee. What's Velus Jones is a gadget player, and he was just miserable last season. So potentially what you want to do is, okay, we want this gadget player. Like Luke Getsy's been looking for it from, like I said, Velus Jones to, okay, Velus Jones can't get on the field, can't understand the playbook. So we're putting Dante Pettis, we're putting Equinemius St. Brown. Now we're trading for Chase Claypool, all like just looking for a similar role for some speed for a guy that we can use on jet sweeps and things like that. I mean, the Chicago Bears are desperate for Mecole Hardman, and Ryan Poles just so happens to have a very good relationship with Mecole Hardman, stemming from his days at Kansas City, stemming from the NFL draft. And oh, would you look at that? Who has the most salary cap space in the NFL? The Chicago Bears. If any team is going to overpay Mecole Hardman, it's Ryan Poles, who graded him highly, who still believes in him, who says you're still 24 years old, who says we already drew up the role. We drafted Velus Jones for the role and he couldn't fit in it. We still schemed for it every single week, and we still ran plays that would have been perfect for Mecole Hardman every single week last season. And you do think about, okay, a guy couldn't work with Patrick Mahomes. How's he going to work with Justin Fields? Some of it comes down to, as he's crossing the line of scrimmage, Justin Fields has the possibility of, he could hand it to Mecole Hardman, or he could keep it himself, and now the linebackers freeze in the middle of the field, and Mecole Hardman has schematic advantages in the running game that, nobody can obviously, be Patrick Mahomes in the passing game. In the running game, I think you could do it. And here's Achy Dragon with a great comment. We saw you last week. Welcome back. We'll be back Thursday. Like I said, tune in on Thursday. We'll be back at the same time and place for more Bears talk. He says the Bears need all the pass catchers they can get, and that's exactly. And the reality is, like I said, I agree with you completely. Who is it free agency wise when you say, who checks all the boxes for what the Chicago Bears need? A lot of people say Jacoby Myers might be the best. Like I said, I think the Chicago Bears, I think they want that speed, that dynamic. If it comes down to it and it's even, yeah, if it's even, maybe you take Jacoby Myers over Mecole Hardman, or maybe if it's lesser, you take, the cheaper player or something like that. I think the Chicago Bears look at Mecole as a specific scheme fit, and they say, yeah, if you, then all of a sudden you look at it and say, okay, Mecole is that gadget guy, Chase Claypool on the outside, Darnell Mooney in the slot. If you get somebody else in there, now you could possibly be cooking here. So just a few more minutes. Like I said, Achy Dragon, thank you for the comment, and tune in Thursday. I guess we will kind of just wrap it up there, and that if I had to call my shot for who I think the Chicago Bears are going to sign in free agency, I think Mecole Hardman is probably the easiest name to point to at this very second. Another name I think is very easy to point to is Bobby Okereke from the Indianapolis Colts. The Bears need a linebacker. He's more of a coverage linebacker. Jack Sanborn's more of the run defense linebacker. They fit extremely well. It not only goes back to Matt Eberflus, the Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator last season. Dave Borgonzi was the linebackers coach for the Indianapolis Colts when they drafted Bobby Okereke, and they were able to get Bobby Okereke on the field during his second season, and he was able to get, obviously on the field. And here we go. Yeah, as we kind of wrap it up at transition, he says steal Allen Lazard from the Green Bay Packers. My question with that is, and first off, he's going to be a free agent, and it doesn't sound like the Packers are even interested in keeping him. I think they see, Christian Watson, Romeo Dubs, and things like that. So he may be a free agent. The thing that I would say with Lazard is, I just wonder if he's too redundant to Chase Claypool. He reminds me of Chase Claypool, that bigger body. I think he's a little bit slower than Chase Claypool, maybe a little bit better route runner than Chase Claypool. But I think, like I said, with Mecole, it's that different dynamic. And I think Mooney's more straight ahead. Mecole's more left and right. And Claypool's the big body. Whereas Lazard, I think, is too similar to Chase Claypool. And yeah, Juju makes a lot of sense too. I think Juju makes more sense than Alan Lazard to me personally, because I think then you stick him in the slot and you have Mooney going down the field. Uh, Juju obviously knows. Juju knows Chase Claypool, like you said. Good point about Chase Claypool. Juju knows Chase Claypool very well, and potentially they play together. But I think you could have Darnell and what's his name, Chase Claypool on the outside, and you put Juju on the slot, and it is similar to when Juju and Claypool were at the Steelers. And you say, well, the Steelers didn't want either of them. Now you're taking the Steelers trash, but you also say, hey, the Steelers have a very good reputation for wide receivers. The Chicago Bears have an awful reputation for wide receivers. I think they'll take anything they can at this point in terms of signing Juju, who, like I said, I think makes a little bit more sense than Lazard. I do think Mecole Hardman makes a lot of sense, but thank you so much for the comments, AK Dragon. I think that's going to do it for us today. From 6 to 6:30 Eastern, 5 to 5:30 Central. More Chicago Bears talk. We'll be back Thursday to do the same stuff, and probably just going to go down more of my free agency wish list here, and maybe call some more shots as free agency gets started. So we'll talk to you guys later.